Good evening, ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties. This is Alex, coming at you from the underworld, and welcome back to another episode of... Although June is practically over at this point, I hope everyone has had a great Pride celebration while maintaining good health and good spirits during the coronavirus scare. Also, I hope the book reviews that I provided for you during this time, such as the GLBT horror authors I've reviewed in June, has brought you some entertainment and hope you felt like you were celebrating a little bit more, which also I do plan to expand these book reviews out beyond the month of June. So if you enjoy some of the authors like Poppy Z. Bright or John Saul or Michael McDowell or Clive Barker, just know I'm not going to limit them to June only, and there will be more book reviews for them in the near future. Which, speaking of Clive Barker, this weekend I'm reviewing Clive Barker's The Damnation Game, which was his first full-length novel, and I want to give a special shout out to Stacy Kinsler because Stacy requested I review this book, and I just simply hope that you are enjoying the video and I do the book justice for you. But with The Damnation Game, this was Clive Barker's first full-length novel, and even though there are no same-sex characters or transgender characters in the book, it is still written by a man who is a part of the GLBTQ+ community. So for this reason, I feel like it is justifiable to review. And at this point, I've read the book about 2 or 3 times, which recently I read it again with my friend Tiny, which as she and I were discussing the book, she had mentioned that it felt like all of the characters in here were constructed of the 7 deadly sins. And after she pointed that out, I really could not unsee how she made that connection, which, truth be it, all of the main characters as well as a few secondary characters do fall into that groove of the 7 deadly sins. But I do think that maybe there are 2 or 3 characters that were simply just pure souls and in the wrong place at the wrong time, or as pure as they possibly could be. But with The Damnation Game, it is a horror novel that's packed with philosophy, and at the same time it's open, and such as with any type of good art, it's going to speak differently to every reader who reads it, or at least I think it will. So, without me rambling any further, let's go in and get down to what you can expect from The Damnation Game. I hope you can see the cover of The Damnation Game because I have my edition that is in a plastic slip covering, and the reason why is because this is a first edition and it's also in perfect condition. So for those reasons, I want to try to protect this as much as I can. But with The Damnation Game, it opens up after World War II is ended, and we are introduced to a gambling addict by the name of Joseph Whitehead. And as he's traveling across the wastelands of Europe, because at this point the war has just ravished everything, he learns about a card player who is named Mamoulian. Well, he also learns that this card player has a habit of always winning, but he never cheats. So because of this, he has a new goal to find this card player and beat him at his own game, which Whitehead successfully does. However, as soon as he wins, little does he know the life that's in store for him after winning. So, as we fast forward all of these years later, we see that Whitehead has become this seniored man, and even though he has led a very wealthy life, he has actually broken his bargain with Mamoulian. So for that reason, Mamoulian is out to get him, and he understands that his time is drawing to an end, so he's doing everything possible so he can protect himself. And at this point, Whitehead has his right-hand man by the name of Mr. Toy go to a prison, and he ends up getting a man by the name of Marty, who had been convicted for gambling addiction, and Marty is a pretty tough dude. So Mr. Toy explains to Marty that if he agrees to be Mr. Whitehead's bodyguard, then he can leave prison early. So this sounds like a pretty good deal for Marty, and he agrees to it. But little does Marty know that he's going to be battling some very horrific things in the near future. The Damnation Game is Clive Barker's first novel, which followed his infamous Books of Blood trilogy. After its release in 1985, Barker revealed to Fresno Bee that he had in mind to create a Faust story without the devil. And one of the strongest lines that the novel provides in this regard is when Mamoulian notes, "Every man is his own Mephistopheles." From Inner Zone, Barker noted The Damnation Game is a book where everyone is morally tainted, and it is their own humanity that has been chasing them. And from the documentary The Art of Horror, Barker noted that in The Damnation Game, he wrote about characters who go on spiritual journeys, and once that journey is complete, they are delivered back into the flesh. Fun facts. Here's a few things you might not know about Clive Barker's philosophies. In regards to The Damnation Game feeling as spiritual as it does, I decided to dive into Barker's spiritual philosophies. While Barker doesn't consider himself to be a Christian, in 1993 he told the Chicago Tribune that he writes religious fiction, and he believes horror is often religious in its roots as it presents life beyond the grave and focuses on good versus evil. In Faces of Fear, published in 1985, Barker explained he went to church for other people's weddings, baptisms, and occasional funerals, and that's it. He also elaborated that he believes in life after death, and he believes we are transformed but never lost. In 1998, Barker told Addicted to Creativity he wasn't given a strict religious upbringing, so when he came to the Bible, he came to it because he wanted to, and he considers the Bible's stories to be important to his work as he considers some of his own stories to be biblical. Now that we have that covered, it's time to move on to the spoilers section of this video, which this is where I'm going to discuss some scenes and character development that could ruin the experience for you if you've never read this book before. So for that reason, if you would wish to click away and skip this section, just scroll down to the comments and you'll see the comment I have pinned at the top has a timestamp in it. Just click on that timestamp and it will redirect you to the thoughts section of this video. Now you only have 17 seconds to do this, so ready, set, go. Since everyone has had the opportunity to click away, I want to talk about a few moments that really caught me off guard, which the first moment I want to talk about is the scene that regards the security dogs of the Whitehead property. Now, prior to this going down, we understand that Marty has resided on the property for about the last 2 or 3 months, and nothing has really happened yet. But at the same time, we're introduced to another character by the name of Anthony Breer, who's also known as the Razor Eater, and we're brought into his life the moment that he commits suicide by hanging, and after that, Mamoulian comes into his apartment and resurrects him so he can become Mamoulian's right-hand man. Well, after this is done, the two of them go to the Whitehead property and they break in where you have the Razor Eater who kills off all of the dogs. And he doesn't just kill them in a simple way, he mutilates them. He cuts their throat, he skins them, he disembowels them, and then he takes their puppies and bashes them into the ground. And even though this is not overly descriptive, Barker does tell us what happens in this moment. It's just not dwelled upon. So after this goes down, you have where Mamoulian and the Razor Eater run off of the property and Whitehead buries his dogs. So some time passes and I'm thinking, okay, well, we're not going to see the dogs again, obviously. They were used as nothing but a warning sign and they're out of the picture, over and done with. Well, I should have thought otherwise because what happens here is Mamoulian ends up going back to the property where Whitehead is throwing a dinner party, which, truth be it, this dinner party is honestly just a sex party that Whitehead is instigating. But as this is going down, Mamoulian ends up resurrecting the dead dogs and they invade the house and take out a few of the party guests. And the imagery that's attached to this is really grotesque because you have to consider the dogs were mutilated, plus they have been buried for a few days here. But the scene that really just pushed it over the edge for me is how one of the dogs ends up eating itself. And that was a pretty nasty gross out. but it's something that's definitely going to stick with me nonetheless. And aside from that, there's another moment that took me by surprise, because what you have is Mamulian feels that the Razor Eater has betrayed him in regards to the character named Karis. And because of this, he puts a curse on the Razor Eater where he is to rapidly decompose over the matter of 6 hours. And this is supposed to allow his body to catch up to the correct time of his death, which was like 6 months ago. So for the next 6 hours, we're going to see a rapid decomposing of his body that would equal out to the 6-month time span. And with this, we see where Barker takes the opportunity to describe how Anthony smells, as well as how his meat and skin starts to droop from his bones. And the imagery that comes here is like just this ghibli stuff hanging off of him, and it's just a gross out. But I think to myself, okay, well, he's just gonna rot and die, and that's gonna be it. No, Barker takes us a step further, because what happens next is the grand finale comes where Marty has gone to rescue Karis, and we think that we're going to see a showdown between Marty and Mamulian. But no, we have where the Razor Eater breaks into the room with a machete and he hacks up Mamulian. And what happens here is like he goes totally batshit, where we just see a full-out just mutilation scene. There's no other way to say it. It is a mutilation scene. And so while Anthony is just going batshit crazy on Mamulian, you have where Marty grabs Karis and they run off, and that's how they survive. But what I really thought was cool is after you think that all of the horror is over, Marty starts having dreams about Mamulian. So he returns to where Mamulian was killed and sees the room is filled with all of these monstrous looking maggots. And we discover that this is the parts of Mamulian that have been cut away and have survived on their own. So I really have to give Barker props, because every time I didn't think he could go a step further, he always did. I want to use this opportunity to bitch about the two-timing bastard by the name of Joseph Whitehead and his miraculous ability to ignore red flags left and right. Now, if it wasn't for this asshole's greed, a lot of the shit that happened in this book never would have went down, but luckily enough, we're blessed with characters who have no common sense. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with him is how he can look danger in the face and then continue forward just blissfully ignorant. And what he does first is he comes across this man, which I can't remember the man's name, we'll just call him Old Dude. But Old Dude tells him about Mamulian and how he's never lost at cards and he's always won because he never cheats. It's just that he's good at what he does. So this is intriguing. I will admit, if I was Whitehead, I'd be intrigued by this, but this right here is what would cause me to turn my fat gay ass around and walk the other way. Which Old Dude here ends up getting set on fire, then drifted down a sewer, and Whitehead understands Mamulian is guilty for doing this. So instead of doing what any rational-minded person would do, which would be to haul ass, he continues his pursuit. And this is when he comes across the second character, which is this lady who has her lips that have been cut away. Like, I think she probably had lips at one time, but something just happened where someone took them off. And she explains that she can take Whitehead to Mamulian, which he's like, okay. So he follows her and plays Mamulian at cards, and he wins against Mamulian. So because of his winning, he ends up learning from Mamulian, like Mamulian becomes his teacher, and he ends up gaining. He prospers a great deal, and Whitehead becomes like this multi-billionaire tycoon for the pharmaceutical company in Europe. So from here, we see that Whitehead has gained a great deal. But all he has to do is simply let Mamulian use his body as a conduit so Mamulian can enjoy some of the earthly pleasures, which he's been neglected of these pleasures for about a century or two. So anyway, Mamulian gets into Whitehead's body where he can enjoy an orgasm every now and then. And then he leaves the body, so Whitehead has control once again. And after this going on for quite some time, Whitehead gets to the point where he's like, I've gained everything I want. I'm rich and I have no worries. So that means I don't need you in my life anymore. So he kicks Mamoulian out of his life, and Mamoulian lands on his ass like some hollaback girl. And truth be it, if I was Mamoulian, I'd be pissed off too. I mean, hell, I gave my all to you. And you have the audacity to throw me on my ass? Hell no. Aside from hurting the dogs, which I never would have done, my thirsty, trifling ass would have been on Whitehead's doorstep of every hour of the day and night, bitching and screaming until I got my way. Although I enjoyed the Damnation Game the first time I read it, I didn't fall in love with it until my second or third read, which I think the reason why is because upon reading it a second and third time, I noticed that the book had a philosophy to it as well as a pretty good social commentary. Now, as far as philosophy goes, I noticed that the characters by the name of Mr. Whitehead and Mamoulian had both been in two completely different wars. And even though they were in these two separate wars, they did have similarities that they had experienced while at war and after war was over. So because of this, I kind of think that Barker might be trying to say that all wars are a gamble. Either that or all wars are one war. But if we were to look at the concept that all wars are a gamble, it totally makes sense why Mamoulian uses gambling to lure in his next victim. So that was a pretty nice touch. Now, as far as a social commentary goes, greed is the name of the game, and greed is something that umbrellas everything in this book, and with that we see other subjects pop up, such as addiction, and this isn't just gambling addiction, this is sexual addiction, drug addiction, and the list continues. Plus, we see that enablement is another topic that comes into play and how it can be just as dangerous as addiction. And this comes about where you have Mamoulian who is enabling Whitehead, and in turn, Whitehead is enabling his daughter Karis as well as Marty. So these are the topics that are really focused on. And since I'm mentioning character names here, character-wise, I did not feel like anyone in this book was a saint, but I did not feel like anyone was truly evil at the same time. Like, it felt like everyone was just simply human beings, if that makes any sense. And the only characters who I felt were truly free from sin were the helpers that Mr. Whitehead had, but at the same time, they knew about what was going on. It's just that they felt like they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, or like they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I really felt like they were the only ones in this book that were truly good souls. Now, as far as concept goes, I really love how Barker took the concept of Faust and made it his own baby. Like, he took an age-old concept here and modernized it and was true to the original subject matter while making it his own, and I just totally love how he did that. And as far as being scared, this book did not scare me and it did not creep me out, but there is a pretty good gross out factor to it, and he's able to present a gross out where we are able to be just kind of cringed a little bit. We feel like there's some cringe-worthy moments, but he doesn't go overboard with it. And if I were to compare it to his Books of Blood series, the Books of Blood are quite a bit more intense than what this novel is, but at the same time, I could totally see where the Damnation Game is worthy of being in the subgenre of splatterpunk. I feel that the Damnation Game provides a very nihilistic look at the dark heart of man. And because of everything that goes down in this book, I would suggest reading it once as a surface read, then walk away and read another book, something where you can just leave your brain at the door, and return to this and read it again to get the deeper message. Now, with that said, I don't believe this book is going to be for everyone, but at the same time, being a huge fan of Clive Barker, I would say this would be a great first read if you've never read him before, because it really gives you a good idea of what he's able to provide and how far he's able to go. So, because of all of these reasons, yes, I highly recommend that you read The Damnation Game, and I highly recommend that you read it more than once. On to the questions. My first question is, what is a horror book you would recommend that has recreated a classic piece of literature? Load up the comments. My second question is, how do you feel when a modern book does recreate a classic piece of literature? Personally, as long as the creator is paying respects to the original work, I'm totally okay with it. But once they start becoming really hokey with it, that's when I lose my interest. And I could be assuming when it comes down to this subject, but I've never read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter or Pride and Prejudice and Zombies simply because it seems like it's too much of a gimmick, and I just really have no interest in that. But if you feel like those books are really good and I do need to read them, I might read them in the future, but it's not going to be at the top of my to-be-read pile. And speaking about to-be-read piles, I am probably going to do a compilation video next weekend where I'm doing another top 3 list of books. And I kind of thought about maybe doing a video of books that I haven't read yet that I'm looking forward to. So that's a possibility, but I know I'm not going to do a book review because I have too much going on this week and just don't have that time to dedicate for this week. But if you would like for me to do a top 3 book list on a different subject, definitely let me know and I'll take that into consideration for next weekend's video. And with that said, it's time to go in and close out this video, which I would like to say thank you to Lisa G and Joseph Baylott for contributing to my Patreon. If you would like to contribute to my Patreon as well, just go to the description section of this video, click on the link that's provided for my Patreon, and you'll see that there's a few different tiers available, one of which is $5 a month, where I'll give you a shout out at the end of my videos, and the second one is $10 a month, where you'll still receive that shout out, but I will also send you over one of my photographs once a month. And I do creepy photography on the side, so it'll be creepy of what I send you. And at that point, just feel free to print it off, do whatever you want with it. So those are the options, and if you can do it, that's awesome. If not, that's cool too. All I hope is you return to this channel and we have a fun time together talking about horror. And if you would like to connect with me on social media, I have links to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram in the description section as well, so feel free to hit me up. And if you have not subscribed to this channel, be sure to subscribe and click that notifications bell because I have tons of more book reviews coming in the near future. And until we see each other again, I hope you have a wonderful week and sweet nightmares.